While it's getting to start recording, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Let's get started with the day second session for the automation training. So just to start with, let me share my screen. We will do a recap of what we have done so far. Uh, so let us see the agenda which we have planned. So the session two, what we are planning would talk about the conditions, error handling, and then various different types of control we have, like the script task, the service task, all those things. We would cover those scenarios where to use conditional, where to use the error handling boundary events, and then how do we create a workflow, little bit complex workflow than the simple workflow which we did on the day one. We would walk through one of the complex workflow, and then we would have some assignments planned for you to complete the training part of it. So that's the session two which we have planned. Just to recap on the key components of the workflow. So main would be the apps and instances. Apps is nothing but the consolidation of the operations for a particular app. For example, in case if you take, I have got an Active Directory app, that means it would have all the Active Directory operations like get user, add user, enable user, disable user, unlock user, all those consolidated would call an app. So that's what. Then apps can run, some of the apps can run on specific instances. So that's where it will be test instance or a production instance. We can configure them while configuring. The instances would be configured probably mostly for the REST-based connectors. So where we have we create a new connector called REST, and then you have operations defined for that connector. You can also define the instance on which it should run. So that's what the applications part. Operations, as we discussed, I think a couple of questions around that. What are mule connector and REST connector? To start with, just to make sure it's clear, we have two types of operations we can create for a particular app. When you create an app or when you configure an app, mule apps are only downloadable. Like for example, you create a mule soft. We'll cover them later. So what is mule and then what benefits it would have, and then because of the richness of the connector we will go with the mule. Otherwise, if we can get all the required stuff for a customer to get them through the API call through the REST interface, you don't require to go to the MuleSoft, define the connector there or define the workflow there and then get them over here in our automation. You can still go ahead with the standard REST interface, build the connector using the standard REST connector, and that would also be suffice the need. Based on the need, we can decide what connector type or what operations you would need and what interface types you would need to configure the workflow. And then the other decision points, which we talk about BPM and task like service and script, and conditions like the one which we discussed, gateway condition, and the script and the error boundary event. So we'll talk about that in detail today. So, and then to build a particular workflow, I think we discussed what are what are the prerequisites which we need to cover, means what are the input parameters it would require, how the workflow would flow, what are the parameters which it require, what are the tasks it would require to complete that workflow. Are those available already, or do we need to create an operation? So those things we would have to get the list of all the steps needed to run or create a workflow. Need to be probably we have to have jotted down somewhere or create a list of items which are required to build the workflow. And then you'll design the workflow. While designing, you need to specify what are the input and output for each of the step you configure in the canvas, so that it will be easy when you start designing the workflow or building the workflow in the automation tool. So let's talk about the sample one, which we did on the other day, and then we'll quickly hand it over to Sneha to cover the day two part. So this is what the sample enable AD user, which we built the other day. So that means what we did in that day is like get user call. This is an operation where we got the user and then check whether the user exists in the system, because sometimes you might do SAM account name get call, but you don't have that information, or that user probably might be a typo issue or might not be available in the system. What we should do for those scenarios, we will cover that later. But this is the first step where it would get the user, check if the user exists in the system, and then if it exists in the system, and then if it is already enabled, what we are doing here is like check both. Check first the user exists and also check whether it is enabled. If it is enabled, true. So this is the condition which we are doing. This is the step which we are doing. This is an operation. So where we are providing an input of SAM account name, and then operation is what we call it as the check get call. Get call user, it's available in the system. And then on success, we are putting all the information which are required for me to take further action. So what we are doing here is like while checking itself, we are also checking whether the enabled, if the user is enabled or not. So we are doing it one single get call, but we are doing it get call and also validating whether the user is enabled or not. So based on the value of that one, for example, if you see the condition here, if it comes enabled is false, so that means it's available, but enable is false, so that you will going to do the enable operation. So this enable operation would just go and update or enable call with the SAM account name. It will directly go to the active directory and then enable that particular user. And then you also have the Luma notification, where we would probably specify what are the parameters, what are the information which we need to pass here in the payload to enable or send a notification to the particular user. So this you can parameterize them. Currently, we have only parameterized the user ID, but you can also parameterize the rest of the information and then provide that as an input. So that is all possible, and then send the proper notification to the respective user on success of the previous step. Same thing in case if the enable already user is there, created or available and also enable, you would just go directly to notify the user. So you can configure the same step with a different message for this particular operation. So that way, each of these step it would store separately, even though you might be calling the same notification call, but the information what you have saved here are different. You can configure the messages, input and output parameters for this differently, so that you will be able to create a workflow and then execute them. So this is what we saw the other day, where we created this particular workflow and then ran through the steps. How do we create, and then how do we create this particular workflow? So any questions before we start the day two part? Then meanwhile, Sneha would take care for the day two part. Over to you, Sneha.
Thank you, Prasanna. Let me share my screen.
Any questions till then, until Sneha comes up with the...
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sneha, we can...
Sure. Can you see my screen, Prasanna?
Yeah, we can see the
Okay.
screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the session 2 of Serviceaide automation training. As Prasanna said, we have looked at a few design elements that we can use to create workflows. Today we'll go through and look at a few other elements that can be used to create conditional flows within our workflow and create complex workflows. So the first one here is conditional gateways or XOR gateway. This gateway is also called exclusive gateway, which is used to create alternate paths. The XOR gateway is basically used to decide which path will the workflow execution take. um, we can add this gateway in sequence with the other steps in the workflow, and based on the previous execution or the user input, we can define which flow or which path should the process or the execution should now take. All the This gateway can have a maximum of three alternate paths, which are evaluated in the order of their definition. Whenever a path is evaluated to true, the specific path is executed by the system. The example that we see here is in this example, the system checks whether a specific user has a valid Luma channel account ID or not, which means whether the specific user is registered on a specific on any Luma channel. The outbound the outbound response from this step is then used to evaluate the next steps taken by the workflow. So from this gateway, we have two parts. The one which says yes checks whether system finds any Luma channel registered for this provided user. If yes, the system sends out a channel notification to the user. In case the user is not registered on any Luma channel, the an email is sent to notify the user of the information. So this way we can have a maximum three paths which can be evaluated, and then the workflow decides which path evaluates to yes, and the specific path is taken during execution. The other way of defining a conditional path is error boundary. Now, error boundary is used to handle errors during the execution of a specific step. Here, we can handle any technical errors or any business errors or business validations that may occur during the workflow execution. Here, we can handle technical errors such as service not available, or not a valid request sent to an API. So these technical errors or the errors in terms of no data found from the during the web service execution or received as a response. These errors can be handled using error boundaries. We can create any number of error boundaries and then define possible alternate paths for any errors that we foresee that may occur during the step execution. Now, when we create error boundaries, the very first step is to define error codes. When I say error codes, this means defining what type of errors do we foresee that may happen. So the first one is on failure. On failure handles the technical error. For every service task, which you can see here, for the service task, for every service task in the properties panel, we have a tab which says on failure. Now, on this tab, we can define what are the error codes or the errors that we foresee may happen during the execution of this task. So here there are out of the box status codes. For example, service unavailable or 404 these error status codes are already available, which can be handled. And for each of these code, we can then define the specific path. So or these error codes, you can create any number of error codes and define any number of following paths that you would want to take when the defined failure happens. um, the one point to remember here is the error codes that we define under on failure are executed or evaluated only when the step fails. In case of a failure, these error codes will be evaluated. If the step does not fail, I'll give you an example of that. So let us take an example where we make a call to the Active Directory to find user details. So the call is made, but we do not receive a response from AD because the user does not exist. In this case, the web service call is considered successful. So the service task is successful, but we have not received any error. So we have not received any data from the web service. In such a case, these are handled with business validations. Business validations are defined on success tab of a service task. These are also similar to error codes, where based on the response that we have received from the web service, or based on the response which we have received from the user input that happened at the beginning of the workflow execution. Based on that, we handle or we define the next steps the workflow should take. Now these error codes are evaluated, or these cases are evaluated only when the service task execution is successful, and there has been no status error received by the system. The Similar to on failure, we can create any number of business validations here on the on success tab, but only one of these error codes or business validations are executed and at a given time. This is not a way to execute parallel paths. For any number of validation, the very first validation that is evaluated to true, system executes that or takes that specific step.
Right. But still, we can manage some of the conditions. For example, in case if you want to have a workflow created and then want to take different alternate paths based on the category. Take example of one of the ISM or one of the system where you have category network related category and then application related category, and then based on that you can have a business condition. If it is network category, perform this task. If it is application category, perform this task. So those can be created as one of the using this particular task.
Right.
Yeah, but Prasanna, that may not be the real use case for business validation. So
Hmm.
business validations are, so that's the happy path, right? So you would do that in a happy path case. That's actually your process definition or workflow definition. In which case,
Right.
probably it's better to use the gateway condition,
So
right?
if
So
my condition is more than 3, right, assuming a scenario where I need to take, I have 4 options, 4 choices basically. In those scenarios, we can still use this particular conditions, right?
in that case, also you can use gateway condition, though. Condition on multiple variables. That's what you're saying, right?
Right, right. But how
You
do I
should be able
connect
to.
4 paths, 4 routes to that? I want to
You
connect
can.
4 nodes.
As such,
You,
there is no limit, Prasanna. You can configure n number of flows on gateway also.
Okay, but
but this,
connection endpoints are 1 only, right? Are 3 only, right? Where do I have got 4th one connecting to one from that particular gateway node?
Uh, Even though it shows that symbol, but you can connect, you can branch out a number of flows from there. It will automatically adjust that in the
so you can have as many number of outgoing flows from
Okay.
exclusive gateway. So the X symbol represents the XOR, I think, exclusive, to say it is exclusive gateway. So to say only one of all the conditions are exclusive and only one of the condition that match to true, that path, the alternate path would take in effect, or even default flow for that matter. If none of the conditions are met, the default flow would be taken. But you can connect as many flows as you want, outgoing flows from exclusive gateway. So the on failure or business validations are mainly for the cases where which are unanticipated, right? So you would generally configure the happy path case how your process definition should be or process flow should be. But I think in the cases where the external integrations are, I mean, the apps that you're trying to connect, so those are not accessible or there are some problem with the configuration, in which case, so you will get uh, uh, you'll get that integration call failed, in which case the default behavior. So I just want to say that on top of what Sneha mentioned. So the default behavior when the service task fails due to a technical error, meaning let's say you have a non 200 status, right? So which can be service unavailable. Let's say maybe it is getting timed out, right? So all these errors are considered as failures, right? The default behavior is to uh, fail the step and fail the workflow. Ultimately, unless the error is handled part of on failure error rules. So if nothing is defined, whenever an error occurs, it is going to eventually fail the step and workflow. But you want to have an alternate path, you have to handle them by defining the error codes and having the error boundary event to have the alternate path for
That's
those
right.
error cases.
The error boundary is mainly for error handling, and in case of exceptional case, we can also use it for business validations.
Yeah.
But conditional gateways are the ones which we would use for getting into alternate routes or
Yeah,
paths
to move into
from
the
the
to
for
proceed your to
right on
proceed your
successful
process
completion
definition.
of that particular step. Successful completion of the step, what are the things which we wanted to do, we will have to configure through conditional gateway.
I think the best example is, let's say you are trying to procure a laptop, right? So what you would typically do is to directly go and the step is to directly go and procure the laptop when it is requested for, right? But let's say, but what you want to do is the business validation. One of the business validations can be you want to check for the stock availability, right? So and take an alternate path to first wait for the stock to be available or notify the concerned team to have the stock available, right? So that's
Right,
the
that's
alternate
right.
path, or the alternate, which is the right use case for business validation. But
I
in the
think we
happy
do
path case,
have
which
in
is
the examples where we will talk through those scenarios, and then we will touch upon those scenarios there. Sneha, I think you can continue.
Okay. So once the error codes are defined, it is simple. It is very simple to add the error these error codes to the workflow. Just select the service task, drag the error boundary event and add it to the service task and relate the error code. Whenever this error code or the condition mentioned in the error code is evaluated to true, the path associated to this error path will be taken by the workflow execution. One thing to notice here is the error boundary or the error codes. These are linked to the service task itself. So whenever the service task is executed, these error codes are evaluated as part of this, and this is how it appears in the error logs too. The gateway execution happens only after the previous step is successfully executed and the execution or the workflow execution reaches the gateway. So along with the differences that have been mentioned by Kishore and Prasanna, this is another difference between the error code or the error boundaries and XOR gateway. And the error boundary, we have another design component which is called script task. So script task enables the workflow designer to execute a user defined script as part of the workflow execution. This supports Groovy script, and it can be used to manipulate or to add conditional to run some loops on the information that we have received from the API or information provided by the user during workflow execution. So this script task can be added in sequence to other steps. Whenever the workflow execution arrives at the script task, the script configured at this step is executed. The example that we see here is a simple script that increments a counter. Now this we are using this counter to create a loop within the workflow, and add and validate the user information or the NDIDs available, or the SAM account that is available in the Active Directory. We'll see this script working in one of our examples. But this is a simple script that can be used as part of script task. As part of script task, we can add error codes the way we did in service task. Now I'll pass on the control to Shekhar, and he'll walk us through a few examples where we'll see these controls working. Over to you, Shekhar.
Thanks, Neha. So let me share my screen. Okay, so we'll create a workflow for creating a new Active Directory group today. So do this.
So here what we are trying to do is create a new Active Directory group. That's a simple case, and then we are making, if the name already exists, what it should behave and how the error conditions can be used to handle those scenarios. So that's what we are expecting to do in this particular workflow.
Okay, so for creating a new group, there are few inputs that is needed. Uh, we need a group name.
We need the group name, we need the group SAM account name.
We need the which is it a security group or a distribution group? As radio buttons. And we need is it a universal group or a global group. And finally, we need the description. Let's go to the create group operation. So here the input parameters are already defined. We just have to map them to the workflow input parameter. Operation. Now let's
Okay, it got created successfully.
we can check the Active Directory. Okay,
An automation group created.
So now, as we discussed, if we want to, if the person requests for the same group details, if he provides for the same thing, let me end this. Delete.
So if he provides the same details, it should throw an error.
Yeah, actually, it will be successful. But in the trace log, you would see that this group already exists. Do you see this? This group already exists. So in these kind of situations where it is successful, but we should get to know about it, right? So that is why we can create a error boundary event. So okay, so here on success, we will go to business validation.
So here we are creating the error code, basically what it should happen, what condition.
And
So if the
this,
error message finds group already exists, it should go to this error code.
so now output parameter, creativity group. So yeah, the group already exists. It comes in the std out output. So that is why I'm giving std out equals constant
But
value.
but the service task is to create the group itself, right?
Yeah,
Would
but
we have to?
no, but if one group is created and if some other person comes up and again tries to create a group with the same name or same SAM account name, it shouldn't allow doing that.
Okay, I mean, in which case we'll have to check for the existence of the group, right? By getting the group and then have the error boundary on that service task.
Yeah, first in the input itself, we can, yeah, if the group already exists, we can check that and only then we can go ahead and create a group.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that too, Kishore.
Yeah.
Constant value. Anything.
Should it be contains check, not equals, right?
Yeah, contains this. Contains specified group.
Yeah.
And then find this.
So we can add notifications, other things to that
Yeah,
step so
after
that we
this,
can make
yes.
the complete path. Currently, we can just wind up at the end there too.
Okay, okay.
I think the syntax.
Specified group.
Can you check, was it part of STD out or STD error?
1 minute. Yeah.
Yeah, go. It is part of STD error. You can go.
Is error?
Yes.
Oh yeah, STD error. So change on success. Thanks, Ritesh. Yep. So now here, as Prasanna said, you can send a notification to the bot saying that the group already exists.
Right. So that's how you can build the error condition and then condition to just make sure we got the complete flow. I think we have already created a couple of workflows with all these conditions. I think we can probably walk through that to make it more clear? I mean, because building it with those
Yeah,
conditions
so
would take a lot of time. So yeah, go ahead, explain this
yeah, so
flow.
this is the same thing, like it's a creation of group, and if the group is not existing, it will create the group and then it will create a ticket. So for creating a ticket, we have used this ISM app, and in the input parameter, we are just capturing the group name so that it can be used in the VSA communications, telling the user that this is created. That is why we are using the input as group name. And this group name is mapped to the workflow, the output parameter of this group, because we are creating the group with the group name which the user has entered. So, and then after creating the ticket, uh, we can, I mean, since the workflow is already executed and I mean, not the workflow, since uh, the objective is already accomplished of creating the group, uh, we are also resolving the ticket after creation. So that is why we have created another operation. We cannot create and resolve the ticket at the same time. That is why we are resolving the ticket and we are uh, creating the ticket, and in the in the success or on the success, the output parameter, we are capturing the ticket ID because that can be passed to the resolved ticket as an input. And in the operation, we are just entering ticket identifier and ticket ID, the status is resolved. So once this is done, you can also set up another notification to let the user know that the group is created and this is the ticket number associated for this task, and it has been updated to resolved. So this is one thing. And the yeah the other
Shekhar, Shekhar, can
yeah
you next go through the employee onboarding workflow?
okay.
Just
Okay.
open it up, Shekhar. I think, yeah. Really.
Okay.
So this is another complex workflow which we have created. This workflow takes the user's first name, last name, and based on and asks the user the other systems like ITSM system or Jira or Confluence, other systems that the user would need access to. So there are a number of input parameters that are requested to the end user before the workflow execution starts. Some of these can be directly fed into the workflow from the system that triggers this workflow. So it can be a simple ITSM system, or it can be other employee management system where the user details are fed in, and from there on, when the user details are fed in and the workflow execution or workflow is executed. So let's go one by one through the algorithm or the steps that we have that we have created here. The very first step in the workflow is building the SAM account. So this is a script task where we use the user's first name and last name, and use those two values to build a SAM account. So so it can be based on whichever organization we create this workflow for. So in this case, we have used the first name and last name. We have concatenated these the initial three alphabets from the last name and the two alphabets from the first name, and created that as the SAM account. And it is incremented with a counter 1 to start with. So in the next step, the workflow checks whether the SAM account name is already available in AD or not. If the SAM account name is found in AD, then we trigger the next step is to check whether if this SAM account name is already available, then we increment the counter to by 1, and now this counter becomes 2. So let's take an example. by my name. So if the first name is Sneha and the last name is Tripathi, my SAM account becomes TRISN and it starts with counter 1. If TRISN1 is already available in AD, we increment the counter, and the next SAM account that can be assigned to the new user becomes TRISN2. The system again verifies whether this user is available in in AD. If this time the user is not found, then we check, do we have another user with the same first name and last name, because AD does not allow even that. So though TRISN2 is not available, do we already have a user with Sneha Tripathi first name and last name? If this first name and last name is already available, in that case, in such a case, the user is prompted with the or the initiator is sent a notification that this user is already available, and there should be a change in the first name and last name. In case the first name, and if we do not find a user with the same first name and last name too, then we go ahead and create the user in the AD. Shika, can you scroll up a bit? Yeah. So the next step after the first name last name check is creating the user in AD. Once the user is created in AD, we create a ticket, the parent ticket, and which is then used to link and keep a track of all other child tickets that we will create for the following tasks. The next step is to verify what are the other accesses the user have asked for. So in the next gateway condition, which we check whether the user has asked for access to ISM or not. If the user has asked, we move to the next step and create the user in ISM. This is an API call which creates the user profile or the user details in ISM. Once the user is created in ISM, the next step is to create a ticket for a sub ticket for the user creation in ISM, and relating this ticket, the ticket for the ITSM system or ISM, and relating it back to the main parent ticket that we have created. Then once this ISM creation or the user creation is ISM is done, we move to the next check, which is validating whether the user has asked for a Jira access or not. If the user has asked for Jira access, we then move to the next step. We create the user in Jira or any other system that the user has asked access for, create a ticket, create a child ticket for that, and now link this child ticket to the parent ticket again. If the user has not asked for this access, we take the alternate path which says Jira false and move on to the next check, which is validating if the user has asked for access to Office 365. The same check happens again. If the access is requested, we create the user or we provide the user with Office 365 access, create a ticket and relate the child ticket to the parent ticket. And once the whole process is executed, then we send out a notification to the initiator that the request or the complete employee onboarding is complete. Now here we have just added a few steps, but based on the organization we build this workflow for, we can add any number of systems. We can create user in any number of system, provided those systems can we can they provide APIs which allow us to create user profiles in those systems. And some of these controls that we see here are out of the box. For example, we have create user in AD, validate user details. These are out of the box controls or operations that are part of the out of the box content. Some of these are API based, so which we build during the workflow execution. We will talk about how these operations are created in the next session when we look at how to create global operations or how to build your own content. Any questions here?
This specific workflow is what we wanted to showcase here is because this contains all the elements of the workflow, like the script task, the service task, error boundary event, gateway events. All those things are depicted here, and this is one of the use case with little bit complex, then we can that want to showcase that we can build complex workflows using this designer without any coding knowledge, without any this one, with just drag and drop and little bit of information which we can provide to add the conditions and other stuff. We should be able to build this type of workflows based on the need for the customer.
Shekhar, can we go through the service down workflow also? Can you log into?
So I have a question on this workflow.
Yeah.
It seems like you have to like define, I mean, you've got like a single path through this stuff. You can't like split off and then merge back and, you know, that kind of thing, because you've got like two places where you create Jira. You've got multiple places where you create Office 365. You know, as you add more and more and more, it's going to get more and more complex in this workflow where you have to maybe the last one, you've got to define it like 5 times or 10 times or however many paths you have through this workflow. So is there a way of like branching to a spot in the workflow so you can, you know, only have to define it once?
If I understand your question correctly, Ken, your question is that at multiple places we have the check on Jira, or on the same condition we are same conditions we are checking multiple times, right?
Correct.
So the current there is a current limitation on the XOR gateway. XOR gateway can have one input, and I cannot access the same XOR gateway from multiple points. And this is the reason why this check is has been multiplied or has been done at multiple places. We can branch from one XOR gateway or one decision point, and then come back to the same service task again after executing a few steps. We can do that. I can show you another example where it's a simple example, but where we have done this. But using on the same XOR gateway or same condition, we cannot come from two places. It's a limitation on the XOR gateway.
That's going to make the workflows much more complex.
Right.
Right. In right now, if you notice, all these checks are happening in sequence. So we are not validating multiple things in one go. So this is happening because we cannot have parallel executions in the current setup, but in coming releases we will have other controls that will help the user or the workflow designer to have multiple paths defined, where we start from one point and we have multiple conditions being executed together in parallel. So that will make the workflow more easier to understand and to more easier to design.
So Sneha, are we asking for the parallel execution of
Right.
the task here? Like for example, you're creating user in ISM, Jira, and now Office 365 and so on.
Right.
So want to have the
Yeah,
parallel execution
branch
of
it out,
data.
fork it out to multiple sections and then
Yeah.
merge them back.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll have to, of course, I think we support inclusive gateway and the parallel gateway. So those are the
Correct.
ones that we will be picking up in feature releases.
That's
That,
correct.
of course, I think those
Those
that makes
would
the things
handle.
powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what. That
So
is
we have
one
started
point
with
that
the
the
basic.
reason to bring this up. So that's what we wanted to cover. That in the future enhancements, what are the things like this we would cover in those sections. So there is a session planned for that too. But okay, any more questions?
Okay. Which tenant, Sneha, you want me to log into?
Tenant 8992.
So this one, we are going to cover the monitoring services. I think this is one of the use case which we built earlier way back in automation one, while we wanted to do the flow which would depict multiple actions. For example, a service down. What are the things which would cover when a service goes down? So that is the use case which we wanted to cover using this particular workflow. Uh,
Is it ITAS DevOps, Sneha?
Yes, I just developed.
I think I have got it open. Let me share my screen so that will be easy. Ah, no, not right here, I think. And you already got it open? You can.
No, I thought you're opening.
It's okay. Let me open this. Let me share my screen quickly. All Sneha for that workflow. It was
Yes, it is server down, service down, sorry, service down.
stop service. No, not this one. I think I'm in a different tenant then. Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
use case you wanted to talk.
So this workflow is this workflow enables or is triggered or automatically whenever a service on a Windows machine is down. So the health checkup services which keep a track of whether the service, which check whether the services are down or up, is there a change in the status. Whenever they notice, whenever these services notice a change in the status of a specific service, it can automatically trigger this workflow. Now, what this workflow does is it takes two inputs. It takes the service name and it takes the current status. So let us consider there's a service called star, which is down. So what this workflow does is on whenever it is whenever the service star is down, this automation workflow is triggered, which where first it verifies whether we which part do we want to take, whether the service is up or down. So since the service is down, we take the first part. The very first step is logging a ticket in ISM, which it logs a ticket and provides the information on which service is down, what is the current status. The second step is notifying the analyst. So this considers Luma as a medium of communication. So all the analysts or all the users in the analyst group in Luma virtual agent will be triggered a notification on their channel that the service name star is down. The next step here is to find the CI owner details. CI owner details are available in ISM. So we make a call to ISM where we verify whether the CI is available, and if CI is available, do we have the owner details. So in the next step, we check whether the CI is available or not. If the CI is available, the configuration item is now set to down, which updates the configuration item status in ISM itself. The next step is to notify the user. So now, when the CI is found and the owner details are found, we verify whether the owner is available. If the owner is not available, there is no notification that can be sent because we do not have an owner. But if the owner details are available, we verify whether we then go to Luma and find the owner details. So owner detail, once making we make a call to Luma, get the user details. From there, we verify whether this user is registered on any of the Luma detail on Luma channels or not. If the user is available, then we send a notification on Luma channel that the service star is down. If the user is not registered on any of the Luma channels, then we use the user's email ID to send out the notification. And this is how we complete the complete service down process. In case the automation or the workflow is triggered when there is a change from down to up. Now the service was earlier down, and after the restart or a remediation step taken by the analyst, the service is now up. Now we have to update the CI status in ISM. In that case, we again verify that what are the owners CI owners detail. If the CI owner details are not found, or CI is not found, if the CI itself is not found, we end the flow. If the CI details are found, we go to update CI status. We make a call to ISM, set the CI status from down to now active, and then follow the same path where we find the owner's details in Luma, validate whether the user is available on one of the Luma supported channels. If the user is available, we send out a Luma notification. If the user is not available on Luma, then we send out an email to notify that the star CI is now up.
Okay. So this
So
is just to show multiple use cases of how we can use this automation workflow so that multiple needs of the users or the organizations can be handled in one workflow. Building the workflow like that.
One more point I would like to add here is when we notify the analyst, we can use other functionality that are available within Luma to improve the user experience. For example, instead of sending a simple message, we can provide notification in a card, which then provides the user with the remediation process steps. For example, if a service is down, the analyst can directly use another automation workflow to restart the service, or they can access some knowledge articles to see how this can be remediated, or they can view other tickets that are already created for this specific issue, and then similarly take other actions. So we can create a well-formed user experience using other functionalities that are available within Luma, and along with that, trigger other automation workflows, and branching to other activities, like we just saw here, that we can update CIs while the analyst is taking care of the down service, or the service that is not working right now.
Okay. So these are the various use cases which we can build and then test it out, and then use this automation for that. Before we end, I wanted to check a couple of things. I think the assignments part, I think, Sneha, can you share the screen where you have those details? And also, were you able to view the recording in case if you are looking for recording and other thing? I think, is there any issues with that? Let me know. We will be able to address them. I did see a couple of notes, but yeah, they were able to get to the recording without any issues later. But those, and then urge you to take a login in the tenants provided. sample tenants and then try and build it out before we get to the Thursday's call, so that you would definitely have some questions which we can take before the third session starts, so that we will make it more interactive in the third session, where you can provide your inputs, feedback, and then we will have good hands-on with the automation tool. So these are the simple assignments which we thought we already did showed enable user. Same thing, only thing the commands would little differ for the disable. This is what you can try it out, where that you can have a hands-on experience while you build a new workflow. There is one enable user is already there, so you can probably take a look of that, see the conditions, see where all we need to put the input parameters, where all you need to put the operations, what are the things which we need to do for building a particular workflow. So these are the hands-on assignments. We urge you to take them before the next call, so that you will have more interactive session on the third session on the coming up Thursday. Right then, if there is no question, we'd like to end the recording. We'll still be around. You can ask any questions.